Hey, this is Brant over at the RapidView software department. Today we are going to be going over the data transfer process. So there's a couple different ways you can access the data transfer. So this is what you're going to do basically when you finish up your project and you're ready to get this information over to the customer as a deliverable. So the feature is accessible in two different areas. So either off a individual object, so we've got data transfer, or off the entire project we have data transfer. How those two differ is basically scope. So if you come to the project, that's going to give everything in the entire project. So no matter what I have selected in here, right, it's still going to give me every single object. If I have a particular object selected and I only want the data off of one, or perhaps maybe just two, I can highlight them and then go up to the object tab and go to data transfer. So that would isolate it basically down to however many objects I've selected at that time. So to keep things simple, I'm just going to go over just the object or the project entirely data transfer. It's the same whether you do it from the project or the object, but I do want to just show how those two differ, and it's based on scope once again. So going off of the project here, going down to data transfer. See at this top section we have our output directory. So this is telling us where we are going to actually save these files to. And then I also have a checkbox underneath here that says we're going to create a folder that's going to be named whatever the project is, that's going to house all of these other files. So typically you're going to want this checked just for organization purposes, but if for whatever reason like I don't want that folder, you can deselect it. So I'm going to leave that enabled, and then we're going to actually use this these three dots here to set our path. So if I click this, it's going to look like any other Windows file explorer, right? So I've got, you know, my documents, my desktop, downloads, whatever. If I had a flash drive, I could point it at that. I'm just going to keep this going to my desktop for now, so it's just going to go straight to my desktop, nowhere else. I'm not putting it in anything else. I'm going to click OK. So you'll see that pathing, right? C, drive, users, Brant Gerald, desktop, and then it's going to backslash over here, right? Total demo. So that's the name of my project. So that's the output directory section. Down here, selected data, this is where you're going to spend most of your time. This is where we're actually configuring what we are going to transfer out. So we've got all these checkboxes here. So films, pictures, reports, the export file, shape files, and then the viewer. So I'm going to actually just kind of go through each one of these. So I'm going to select all of these boxes. You're going to see this on the right hand side is actually kind of a preview of what's being generated. So we've got basically our pathing here, and then we've got these individual folders that are going to be created that house these additional chunks of data. So I've got films, pictures, my reports was already checked, export file, shapes, and then a viewer. So with all those checked, you'll see this is kind of like an overview. It's not going to show you everything, so it's not going to show every single file that's going to be in there, but it's going to give you an idea of how things are currently configured to be generated. And you see we've got wrenches next to each one of these options. So these are the deep configurations. So I do want to spend some time kind of diving into those more than anything, so you can see how deeply you can kind of configure these data transfer files. So next to my films, I'm actually going to click this wrench, and if I hover over it, it does tell me configure film files. So we've got create video files with data overlay. So if you had subsequent data overlay enabled, if that was an extension you had, and you have basically the data overlay being printed on top of the video after the inspection, you would use this checkbox to get that to be pasted on top of your videos when this transfer happens. So I'm going to actually deselect that because I don't want that enabled right now. Section recordings. So basically each one of these sections down here are naming conventions. So for every object type, we can actually set a different kind of naming convention for those unique files, those MPG files, the video files themselves. So if I come over here to template, there's a couple they give you right out of the gate. So just section name. So what this is saying is it's going to have a prefix of a film folder backslash S underscore. So the S signifying section underscore, and then whatever the section name is. So you'll see that kind of resembled over here on the right hand side. Film backslash S underscore, and then this is an example pipe name that I actually have in my project, .mpg. So there's a couple options. Like I said, upper and lower manhole is also an option. So you'll see that this kind of changes. So this is my upper manhole, my lower manhole.mpg. Still with the same prefix. I can, remove that prefix if I don't like it. I don't really recommend that, but if there is a specification that you're trying to meet, that is an option for you. The last thing I want to show in this is user defined. So this is where it gets really interesting. So with user defined, you'll notice our prefix kind of grays out, and we get this access to these deeper configuration settings. So if I click this, so we've kind of got this build out here of these chunks of basically naming conventions. So film backslash is a folder type. S underscore is the prefix S underscore, right? And then top manhole underscore bottom manhole, and then a little scroll bar if there were more. So I actually want to kind of clear this out and show how you kind of build this up if you wanted to do so. So I'm going to actually leave the S underscore because I think that's a good practice. Clicking this plus here, I have the ability to add a field, add text, or add a directory. So the directory being film backslash already, I guess you could add another directory if you wanted. Kind of up to you, but the big thing is probably adding fields and adding text. So with a field, you basically have the ability to get any field that you enter data into. So either your master object sheet or your inspection sheet, you can actually go through this list and select these different fields. So let's say I wanted something like my, say total length. So that's going to be on my master object sheet. So these objects here, these little icons, the object or the pipe object is symbolizing the master object sheet, and the piece of paper is actually like inspection related information. So if you ever kind of wonder what this particular field's relating to, that's kind of a little bit of a clue in. So I'm going to say total length, add, I want to add an underscore here as well, and then I want to go back to add field, and then let's say I want the pipe segment reference. So that's the name of our pipe, right? So these are all alphabetical. There's that guy. And maybe I want to put, let's say just a couple $signs or something to make it fancy, just for illustrative purposes. And then I click the X once I'm done, and you'll see how this kind of builds out. So on the right-hand side, you can kind of see an example of what this would look like. So S underscore, and then my total length, 226.40, underscore, pipe segment reference, right? And that's going to be the 33ZFDH0, and then my $2 signs, right? What's cool is once you do this, you can actually rearrange these. Once you highlight one of these, you can actually use these arrows and kind of move it around a little bit. So maybe I want my total length to have some $signs in front of it. You can kind of see how that works. So it's a little unrealistic probably to have $signs, but I just wanted to add another thing to kind of move around and show how that works. If you wanted to remove this though, you would just highlight it, and then if you hover over, you can see delete field. So that'll take that one out. Encode file name. So these are kind of, depending on whether it's a forward inspection or a reverse inspection, you can add these prefixes. So your main inspections most likely are not going to have any identifier for them being just a normal forward inspection. But if you did happen to have to do a reverse inspection because you hit an MSA and you had to approach the same pipe from the other manhole towards that blockage, we actually have like a tilde capital G symbol is what it's currently set up for. So I'm going to actually leave that, but that would just help you specify, if you had two video files of the same pipe, the tilde G would be like, oh, that's my reverse inspection. So it's just a quicker reference for you. Activate file extension, so that just keeps the .mpg there. You do want that for sure. And then the rest of this I wouldn't really worry about because you're not going to end up using that. So once you get that all configured, you're just going to click the back arrows. So it's important to note that this does just automatically save. You don't have to like press a save button. So if I just go back, it's all still configured how I left it. So that covers our main section pipes objects. We do have laterals as well, and it's all pretty much the same. So there's a couple different like preset options we can use, and then we also have user defined, and it works exactly the same from there. So this L underscore is a signifier of laterals. S underscore is typically going to be sections, and M underscore is going to be your manholes, and they typically are configured all the same. You just have a couple presets, and then you can do user defined if you want to get. The cdplay.exe is not going to be used unless you're burning to a CD. You do need the cdplay.exe and the datin.txt, but typically you want to keep these deselected because you'll see they do kind of clutter your file setup, so it just makes it harder to find those video files when you're just throwing it on a USB drive. So I typically leave these unchecked. It's probably more of the modern way to work. So I'm going to go back to selected data. Once again, just clicking this back, it does save everything I have configured, so there's no worry there. Pictures, I'm going to go into those deep configurations on pictures. It's a lot of the same stuff, so overlay, once again, if you had subsequent data overlay on your videos because you forgot to enable your overlay, or maybe you forgot a particular field that's required. If you did set up any subsequent data overlay, you would want to enable that on your pictures as well. And then the naming conventions are pretty well the same as they were for videos. So you have a template for picture number, section name plus picture number, inspection date plus picture number, or user defined, and that's where you could get real quirky if you wanted to dive into the deep settings there. All works the same though. So typically it's going to be S underscore. Laterals are typically going to be L underscore, and they're both going to go into a photo folder just to kind of keep them separate from any other files. All right, and once again, this is just kind of an overview of what's happening. So everything in the films section is all going into a film folder. Everything in the pictures section is going into a photo folder, and with the appropriate naming convention from there. So reports, this is probably where you're going to spend most of your time. So I'm going to configure my report files here. In this PDF documents, you have a couple options. So you can do one PDF per inspection. So for every single pipe that I ran an inspection on, there would be a separate .pdf file inside the reports folder. Or I could have one PDF per project. So there would only be one .pdf file, and they would house all of your inspection, all of your objects within that one file. Makes it a little, I find that the one PDF per inspection is a little quicker to reference because you can just find the file, open it, and there's everything related to just that one object. But if somebody's, okay with using like an index or whatever and just jumping to different pages for different objects, you can do the one PDF per project. So it's just going to be a specification that, depending on the customer, you would want to just kind of specify. So I'm going to leave it on one PDF per object because we can kind of dig through some of these more hardy options with like the index and all that. So I'm going to have one PDF file for my whole entire project. This is also just sort of the same naming convention configuration I can do down here. So I can do user defined, or I can just have the file named after my project name as it's resembled over here. So report, folder, and it's just named totaldemo.pdf. Down below here, this is kind of where it really gets in the weeds. So report selection. So this first chunk here, before you get to master data, is actually just overall project information mostly. So if you configured a cover page in your project configurations or your manage order rules, you could turn that on here, and that would give you like page 1 would be some sort of logo. If you want to do any sort of branding like that, you could set that up. Project page is typically information about your project. I'm actually going to keep that deselected. And then table of contents is it's literally just a table of contents. So you're going to have page numbers for every single pipe that you ran inspections on and what page they start on. So when you're doing that one PDF per project, that's probably essential. When I do one PDF per inspection, you're going to see this option actually disappears, right? So I can't do table of contents or photo overview. So photo overview is basically just, it's literally that. It's an overview of all of your photos across all of your inspections, basically within one section of the PDF file. So depending on the customer, that can be kind of cool because you're typically going to take pictures of observations and defects. So it is kind of a quick reference of like, oh, this is what we have going on over the whole project. So I'm going to keep that disabled for now. Statistics is really interesting. It does show you an overview of your entire project and all the inspections you ran. So it'll tell you, if you have 500 pipes, it'll tell you the total length of all those pipes. It'll tell you how many feet you inspected of all these pipes, how many different inspections there were, how many different observations there were, pictures, things like that. So it's kind of like an overview of what the inspections are going to get more in the details of. So kind of cool if you're looking for like, okay, in the month of January, how much feet did we run, so you can kind of use that statistics page for that purpose. Master data. So down here, right, is all going to be related to a specific pipe. Or each specific pipe, right? So master data is going to be that first piece of paper that you fill out, that first data sheet, right? That has basically like the location of the pipe, the height, width, the shape, things like that. So that's going to be essential. It's going to tell you information about the pipe. Inspections is actually going to be the inspection sheet. So that's the second tab that you end up filling in all the information. So it's like surveyed by, your certificate number, pre-cleaning, things like that. Graphics, this is a graphic overview of your inspection for every object. So that's going to show you your start and end point, and then all the observations in between, and kind of that graphic interface that you saw while you were doing your inspections. So definitely kind of cool to use that as a nice overview tool. Pictures is a table view of kind of the same information. So it's going to show you all of your observations with the pictures next to those codes and the distance markers and details. So definitely I recommend including that. And then these others down here are going to be specific to kind of the modules that you're using and what kind of data you're collecting. So tilt and temperature, if you're collecting tilt and temperature data, you definitely want that to be on your report, so you would enable that. Section profile graph, that's for laser profiling purposes. So if you did any laser profiling, you'd want to include that as well. That's going to show whatever cross section the object is currently looking at inside that object sheet, as well as the entire graph for those pipes that you've configured when you did your laser profiling process. So height profile is 3D geosense data laid out over a graph, so that's another one you want to keep your eye on if you are collecting 3D geosense data. And then coordinate list is kind of just like a table view of the GPS coordinates when you were doing GIS collection. So that's another one you can kind of throw in there. Classification and classification statistics are not really used for our purposes, but just know that they're down there, and they don't necessarily generate anything when you do select those. So it's important to note, I do want to make a side note here, cover page, if you don't have one configured and you select this guy, it's going to create a blank piece of paper at the beginning of your report. So just be aware, for cleanliness, I would say, I would just leave that deselected if you don't have one configured. All right, so that pretty well sets us up good for the reports. So I'm going to go back to selected data. Export file, so that's this guy down here, this MDB file. So that's for NASCO purposes. This is how we basically transfer our data from IKAS Evolution and then to like another inspection software if we need to, but this is all the NASCO database essentially. So not a whole lot to configure in here. You can change the file name if you want. I don't really recommend that. You might end up getting yourself into more problems than it's worth really, but it does just take the project name and then .mdb. So that's that guy. Shapes is for the shapefile export. So if you're doing any GIS data collection, you obviously imported in the shapefiles, and now you want to spit out new data to send back to your GIS system so they can maybe get updated, pipe length, or they want maybe the O&M score and the structural scoring for PACP. We can come in here to these deep settings on the shapefile. You'll see we've got format selection, so we can either do a shapefile or a CSV. And then depending on the object type, like section, I can come down here and select what data fields I want to include in these shapefiles for each object type. So each one has their own unique data fields that you can configure separate from each other. But like I said, a good example would be like maybe I want to include this O&M quick rating, and maybe I want to include the structural quick rating as well, right? And then maybe you could attach that to your GIS system for like a quick reference of the condition of those pipes per NASCO standard. Going back. Viewer is kind of the last guy we're going to look at here. This is it's basically IKAS Evolution, but it's a read-only version. So you can generate this and the customer doesn't have to have IKAS installed, they don't have to have a license, but they can open up all of this data in a nice user interface like IKAS Evolution to kind of review it. So there's definitely some cool tooling with the video reviews where you can jump to specific observation points using the graph, and not have to necessarily scroll through the video. You can just jump straight to the video time code of a particular observation. So some of those features that are like intuitive to IKAS Evolution would be available in the viewer. So it's an interesting option if you have a customer that is maybe a little more tech savvy and wants to review data in a more user-friendly way. But there's not a whole lot to configure here outside of the language of what you want the viewer to be generated in, and as well as if you want tilt data included in this viewer. So that pretty well covers all of those options. The other thing I want to just kind of look at here is we do have templates for PACP up here. So we spent all this time configuring these. Now I want to make sure that the next guy that does this does it the exact same way, because I know it's a lot of time and it's easy to miss something, and I want to make sure everything's the same day in, day out. So I'm going to actually create a template here. So I'm going to click this flash, or this 3.5-inch floppy with a plus mark, and we're going to create a whole new name here. So we'll say example template 01. Right, so it's going to have all these options configured, and just to kind of illustrate this, let's say I want to get rid of my export file, my shapes, and my viewer. I want to really simplify this. I only want pictures, films, and reports. I'm going to create a new template. So once again, 3.5-inch floppy with the plus, and I'm going to call this example temp 02. Right, so you'll see here, if I click this drop down, we've got both of those options in here now. So if I click 01, I'm currently in 02. You're going to see all these options re-enable, right? Go back to whatever they were saved as. So even if I were on a different project that had different information, I could still use this template to reconfigure everything the same way. So it's great for when you're trying to have like a consistent data transfer over multiple projects. So just bouncing back to 02, you'll see it kind of slims it down a little bit. What is cool is maybe I'm like, oh, I actually do need that MDB file, so I'm going to select this guy. I actually want to just still use the temp02 template, but I do want to enable this export file now on this template. All I have to do is click this floppy disk here, and that will attach these changes to this template. So once again, just to illustrate, back to 01, everything's there. Back to 02, we're now going to have the Microsoft database file as well. So once I get here, all I have to do is click start. You're going to see everything start to generate. This one might yell at me because I think I already have a folder named this project, but we'll see. Yep, so I'm just going to overwrite all existing files. You typically won't run into that issue, but you'll see it's starting to generate the MPG files. So you can see it kind of moving through this process here. There's my pictures.jpg. So once it finishes up that process, you're going to get this prompt that says data is successfully exported to whatever location you specified. And it's going to say, would you like to open the directory? So I'm going to click yes, just to kind of show you how this shows up here. So you'll see on the desktop, I've got a total demo folder. So inside this total demo folder, which is the name of my project, I've got a couple different folders here. I've got film, I've got photo, and I've got report. Keep in mind I didn't do the MDB file or shape files or the viewer. So this is a little bit of a streamlined result here. But if I open up film, you're going to see I've got all these different files, including my IPFs for Panorama. And these open up like normal MPG files on your computer. Same with photos, right? Just an overview of all of these pictures. And then reports. So this is what a report would look like here. So you've got a table of contents. You've got the pipe statistics. So like I said, you'll see the total length of pipe. This is a little unrealistic because this is pretty well hypothetical on our end. And then the length we surveyed, so obviously we surveyed longer than the total length of pipe, which is not how that would normally turn out. and then it shows you how long your reverse inspections ran. You'll see total number of observations, pictures, number of pipes, all of that. So that's just for mainline pipes. You do also have lateral statistics, same kind of information, and then manhole as well. So this is my first object here. You'll see it's literally named 121. It tells me the address, the city, 8-inch pipe, sanitary sewage pipe, circular, clay, total length of 21 feet. So like I said, all of this was probably just mock-up data, not really realistic to an actual pipe. It does show the inspection information here now. So surveyed by Andy on March 28th, 2023 at 10:25, and then that would be a certificate number for NASCO, complete inspection, downstream, heavy cleaning, and then a lot of this information kind of gets redundant down here. This is a table view of all of our inspection or all of our observations. So you'll see we've got distance, video, time code reference, the codes themselves, and then any remarks. So a lot of this information kind of gets redundant from here. It just kind of shows it in a different manner. So pipe segment graphics, a lot of redundancy, and then you have your codes kind of in an illustrative fashion here. Pipe segment cross sections, this is important to note since we didn't do a laser profiling on this one, but we do have pipes in here that have laser profiling. You will get some of these blank pages just because there's nothing to show on this particular pipe for laser profiling. But I will show you what one of those looks like down here. So this would be, our second pipe here. So you see pipe segment reference 33A FDIO. Scroll down. We do have some pictures on this one, so you can see this is kind of a table view of the pictures. So over here's the picture, video time code, distance, the code itself, and then further details up here as well.
But what we can do is I can wipe the original.
Scroll down. Here's a height profile graph that you can kind of see how this turns out. Pretty cool. Coordinate list, so once again this is related to that GIS height profiling with 3D geosense. You'll see we've got distance, the height, the X and Y coordinates. I'm trying to just quickly find a pipe laser profiling just to kind of show you how that turns out. So there's kind of what a height profile looks like. This isn't a great example either, but you'll see we've got a graph. If we had multiple graphs we configured, those would both be on here as well. So there's one, and then the cross section that was highlighted when we did the data transfer itself. So, all right, and that pretty well covers the data transfer process and how to configure those. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the RapidView software support line. But thanks again for watching. I hope you guys have a great day.
I would have to